Welcome to Governance and Resources on the 12th of February. If I could ask everyone to set their phones to stun, please. And we'll go on to... Oh, sorry, you made me quite so cheeky, but thank you. Thanks you, Councillor Flitter. Could I have any apologies for absence, please?
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Bond, Councillor Gressrax, and Councillor Lees is sub for Councillor Bond.
Thank you very much. And can we have an approval or review of the previous meeting minutes, please? Thank you, Councillor Shelley. Do I have a second? Councillor Ripton. Thank you very much. Everyone for? Any abstentions? And any against? Thank you. Is that carried? Thank you. On to the next item, the public participation. And we've been sent in a question from Philip Sunderland. What arrangements have the committee and council made to improve the current poor governance arrangements in relation to 1, standards of conduct, and 2, the audit? The current arrangements are inadequate in that 1, no separate committee exists for either function, 2, there are no arrangements for the appointment of independent non-elected members in place, and 3, SIP for guidance relating to audit is not followed. What will such improvements in the current inadequate position be put in place? Well, thank you very much, Mr. Sunderland. The Council promotes high standards of conduct by members of the Council in accordance with the requirements of the Localism Act. The Council has adopted the Local Government Association model of code of conduct. Your question refers to the current poor governance arrangements. However, it is noted that your statement is not accompanied by examples, evidence, or explanations to support your assertion. The Council's Governance and Resources Committee received the Complaints Annual Report at the meeting of the 5th of December 2024 for the period of the 1st of April 23 to the 31st of March 2024. As detailed within the report, there were 5 formal complaints alleging breaches of code of conduct for members during 23-24. All 5 complaints were related to town and parish councils. None of the complaints were received in 23-24 were subject to investigation and were resolved by the monitoring officer or deputy monitoring officer at the initial stage. Supporting the council with standards and the independent persons, the council's currently appointed independent persons are Philip Sunderland and Carolyn Jennings. A report is brought before full council on the 29th of September 2022. These appointments are in place until September 2026. Independent persons can be consulted on the decision to investigate complaints, including those relating to District's 71 parish councils, and before a decision is made on an investigated complaint. The independent person may be consulted on other standard matters, including by the member who is subject to an allegation. Responsibility for audit currently sits with the Governance and Resources Committee, which also undertake the role of the Standards Committee. At present, there is no legislative requirement for the Council to have a separate audit committee. However, the Council is aware of the SIP for guidance, and this is presently under consideration. Thank you very much, Mr. Sunderland. On to item number 12. We've got nothing from the preceding meeting. On to item number 4, interests. Any to declare? No. And no item number 5. And then on to item number 6, External Audit Completion Report and Draft Auditor's Annual Report for the financial years ended 21st of March 2024. If I could pass over to yourself, this.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the introduction. So there are 2 appendices in item 6, the Audit Completion Report and the Draft Auditor's Annual Report. A reminder that our audit covers 2 responsibilities, auditing the Council's Statement of Accounts and considering the arrangements that the Council has in place to deliver value for money. The first of those appendices predominantly covers the accounts audit, and the second of the appendices predominantly covers the value for money. If it's okay, Chair, I'd propose if I introduce and talk through Appendix 1 and then pause and allow questions on that part, and then return to Appendix 2 and cover the value for money separately rather than merging them together, if that's okay.
Please, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay. So in terms of the accounts audit, we are now in the final stages of completing the audit of the accounts. You can see from the details in Appendix 1 that there aren't any significant matters arising from that audit, which is a good outcome to be able to report. And all being well, with the final dotting of I's and crossing of T's, I intend to issue an unqualified opinion next week. The committee will be aware from previous meetings and previous discussions with me and my colleagues that getting an unqualified opinion, while it used to be the norm for councils with the imposition of backstop dates, is very much not the norm now. So it's really pleasing to be able to report that we've completed the audit, almost completed the audit, and see no reasons why we wouldn't be able to give that unqualified opinion on the accounts. I won't do a detailed page turn, but just to bring out a couple of matters for you. The outstanding matters in the audit that we're still to resolve are set out in section 2 of the report. That highlights that we don't expect any of those matters to be material or lead to any material changes in the accounts. And we're not waiting for any information from the council. These are things that we are resolving and completing internally. We will issue a follow-up letter at the end of the audit to summarise the outcome from those, so that the committee has sight of the resolution of those outstanding matters. Section 4 summarises the findings from the key risk areas. No significant matters to highlight for members. We do highlight the discussions we've had on the prior period adjustment that the council has processed through for errors that it identified in the value of land and buildings from previous years and have corrected in the appropriate manner. Section 5 highlights the internal control recommendation. We made one recommendation this year relating to those controls around inputting valuation data into the asset register. It also highlights the progress on the recommendations we've made in previous years. And section 6 highlights the misstatements that have been and have not been adjusted in the financial statements. And just to confirm, although there are 3 of those listed, none of them are significant. And crucially for you as a committee discharging your responsibilities, none of those misstatements indicate any concerns with the control framework or the close down arrangements that the council has in place. So I'll pause at that point and take any questions, Chair, on Appendix 1.
Thank you very much. Any questions from people? Councillor Butcher.
Yes, thank you for that very clear report and positive. What's very useful for us is the comparisons you provide with other councils, and your opening comment was very helpful in that regard, the fact that it's unusual to see this. Is there a reason for that, why we should be in a good position, other than the brilliance of Karen and her staff, of course, but that may be an important factor. And any other comparisons you have that might be helpful to reflect on for us, that would be useful.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, there's not one factor that I would pinpoint as being relevant to you being in the position and my audit being in the position that it's in, compared to other councils and other authorities where that isn't the case. Certainly having a stable, strong finance team is one of those. Having a set of accounts produced to a good standard in a good time frame, and having a finance team who engage positively with the external auditor, help the external audit to be completed in a timely fashion, are some of those factors we see here, and they have definitely contributed to us being able to, for each year, being able to complete the audit. I probably can't comment on comparisons to other organisations specifically, because there are very different reasons why other councils are in a different position. I think it's easier just to focus on what you have here that's meant that we have been able to reach the view that we've reached.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. Just a detailed point on the update on progress made to address previous internal control points on page 18 of the presentation, which is 40 of the slides of the agenda items. Are there several employees who could be deemed to be part of the, and we could be liable for in terms of their, I mean, are there several freedom of leisure employees who are still on the books, pension books for us, and therefore we are liable for them?
So in terms of the numbers, I'd probably defer to Karen, who may or may not know the numbers. In terms of clarifying, so these are employees of the Leisure Trust for whom the council is accounting for those pension liabilities on this pass-through basis. They're not, as you say, on the books of the council, but the council is accounting in its accounts for the pension liabilities. It asks its actuary to assess the pension liabilities, including those staff who used to work for the council and now work for the Leisure Trust.
Is there in fact a liability, do we have a liability with respect to those previous employees, or?
There is a pension liability,
There is,
yes.
yeah, okay.
Yes, that's included within your
Right.
LGPS pension liability.
So we're accounting for it correctly, but we should have done something in the past too.
So the recommendation last year was this is a complicated technical matter, and the recommendation last year was to reflect the fact that it would be good practice and sensible for the council to establish that it has and it should be accounting for the liability of those staff. We concluded last year and again this year that the impact of that, having had the actuary's view assessed, isn't material, so doesn't impact on me signing your opinion with those liabilities within. Were it ever to become material, I'm not an actuary, so I couldn't predict whether it could or would, but were it to ever become material, that judgment about whether it is appropriate and correct to account for it would become more critical. But as it's immaterial, it remains as a recommendation, which is going to roll forward, and as the response from the council says, they'll continue to keep that under review to ensure that it remains immaterial.
Thank you. Anybody else? Or shall I go? Oh, Councillor Buttle.
Thank you, Alistair. You mentioned materiality, which I think comes in on page 9 of your report. And to be honest, I've not really got my head around what makes something trivial in its materiality, because it looks like maybe £240,000 is final, clearly trivial threshold. And that sounds like quite a lot of money to me. I'm not too sure, I believe that probably is trivial in your terms, but I'm wondering what it actually means.
Yeah, and just to clarify, thank you for that opportunity to clarify, and I can see the numbers and the way that we've expressed them might be a little confusing. That is 24,000 rather than 240,000, just to clarify. Yeah,
no, that's me reading it badly.
Well, it's not as clear as it could be. I take that point. The trivial threshold is something that I have to set, because that is the level at which, below that level, it is something that would be trivial to you as the audit committee, as the body for as the audit committee, to be interested in adjustments and matters below that level. Otherwise, I would be reporting every tiny little thing that I would identify in the audit, which when you're dealing with a council spending many millions of pounds, there has to be a level at which I, as the auditor, say, I consider that to be trivial. I'm not going to report that. I do talk to Karen about it. Karen's aware of those things. The finance team are aware of those things so that they can correct things if they want and put things in place for future years. But I set that trivial level as being, I'm not going to report things to you as the committee below that level. Does that help?
I think it does, yes. I'm sorry about misreading it. It was a bit clueless. So the £807,000 and the £608,000, where do they come into the final clearly trivial threshold of £0.24 million? Or £24,000. Sorry about that.
Yeah, so when I carry out my audit, when I plan and carry out my audit, I set a level of materiality. That's the 807,000. That is the level at which something in your accounts, if there was something in your accounts above that amount which was wrong, I would not be giving an unqualified opinion, because I would be saying these accounts are not materially true and fair. That's the level at which I consider something to be material. And the auditing standards set out in great detail the factors that I have to consider and what that actually means. The second item there, the 608,000, is the level at which I test at. I have to test at a level below the materiality level, because there may be multiple items that individually aren't material but add up to being a material matter and materially make the accounts less than true and fair.
I actually understood that and found it very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to, if there's any more questions, we'll go on with Appendices 2, please, if we could, please. Thank you.
Okay, so Appendix 2 predominantly covers, as I say, covers our value for money responsibility. And just to reiterate for members, our responsibility on value for money is to consider the arrangements that the council has in place to deliver value for money. And that is different and subtly different to us assessing the value for money that the council has delivered. There are three criteria that I consider in that work, and that is the structure of Section 3 in Appendix 2 that focuses on each of those three responsibilities around financial sustainability, governance, and improving economy, efficiency and effectiveness in the use of resources. So it's pleasing to be able to report, having completed that work, that there are no significant weaknesses that we are reporting, and we're concluding that the council does have proper arrangements in place to deliver value for money in its use of resources. We reflect on the increasing financial challenges that the council faces, but we comment on the strength of the existing arrangements around financial sustainability. I stress even at councils who are in strong financial positions relative to other councils, the importance of continued vigilance and ensuring the financial plans are robust, savings are identified and delivered, and that the council doesn't become dependent on utilising reserves to support the cost of service delivery. Those are critical elements within maintaining and continuing to be financially sustainable. Regarding governance, while acknowledging there are no significant weaknesses in the arrangements, we have raised two what we class as other recommendations. The classification of other recommendations is just to differentiate it from recommendations that relate to significant weaknesses that we've identified. And those other recommendations cover the compliance with the SIPFA guidance on local authority audit committees, acknowledging that this committee fulfills the functions of an audit committee alongside a broader remit. The SIPFA guidance, which was issued a couple of years ago or refreshed a couple of years ago, is helpfully constructed to enable councils to carry out an assessment of the extent to which their arrangements meet the SIPFA guidance, and also to assess the impact of the committee. So we recommended an assessment against those elements within the SIPFA guidance. And secondly, on producing the accounts, linking to the earlier question around the factors that mean we can issue an unqualified opinion on the accounts, acknowledging that action is needed to ensure the council publishes its draft accounts in line with the statutory timetable. Relative to other councils, the council does produce its accounts in a timely fashion, but it didn't hit the statutory deadline for draft account publication for the last couple of years. So we've referred a recommendation in there around delivering the close down plan and making sure that that enables the council to hit the publication deadlines for future years. So I think that's all I really wanted to say on the VFM, Chair, but again, happy to take questions.
No, thank you very much again. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. Again, just a question really about the need for an audit committee. How many times a year would you expect an audit committee to meet? And what would its roles be. That it wouldn't, that, you know, that requires us to have a separate audit committee rather than using this committee as the audit committee.
To be clear, I'm not recommending that that's what the council does. I'm recommending that the council considers what it does against the SIPFA good practice. So this isn't pointing out in any recommendation that the council isn't meeting frequently enough or isn't discharging the responsibilities of an audit committee through this committee. This is assessing the committee's, what the council does against the SIPFA guidance, which does cover, I can't remember the what it includes around the frequency of meetings or the remit, other than it recommends the remit of an audit committee is just on audit and doesn't include other matters.
Right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions? No? In which case, do I have any people to recommend? Councillor Ripton, do I have a seconder? Councillor Hughes? I can have all those vote for, please. Is that unanimous? Yeah, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. On to item number 7, the letter of representations 23-24, if I could please. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Chair. So this report's asking the committee to endorse the letter of representation for signature. The letter provides evidence that the council's management and members acknowledge responsibility for the fair presentation of the financial statements, and that we've approved the financial statements. Appendix A to the letter provides information relating to a misstatement that was identified during the external audit, but where we've declined to amend the statements of accounts on the grounds of materiality. I'm asking members to endorse the content of the letter. The date will have to be amended as the external auditors advised that it needs to be signed on the same day as they sign the audit opinion, and you've just heard from Alistair that that's likely to be next week. I don't expect the content of the letter to change unless you raise something now. It's just a matter of timing. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Any questions on the letter at all? Councillor Ripton.
Yeah, I emailed Karen in advance and she suggested I ask Alistair as he's in the room. It was just in relation to those 3 call-outs around impact of Russia, COVID and Brexit. They seem a little bit out of date now, so I just wondered whether they could be dropped or replaced with something more relevant.
Thank you for the question. I'll answer it to the best of my ability, and I'm going to take the question and feed it back to my corporate colleagues as well. As you'll appreciate, things as formal as letters of representation are driven by corporate templates in audit firms, and our corporate template does include those matters still. In order to remove them, I have to jump through a number of risk hoops, which frankly makes it less efficient and easier to leave it in, while struggling to answer in any credible way why I should be interested in the Council's assessment of COVID-19 and Brexit, as we are several years on from such matters. I will feed that back, and I would hope, while making no promises, but I would hope that in next year's letter of representation it might have more pertinent and relevant matters in. Does that answer the question?
No follow-up. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so thank you for drawing my attention to this list. It's an interesting list, and I hadn't appreciated that we did take this interest. And that brings me to another question, and that is future risks. Now, that's not for this report, but for the subsequent report, so it's a little bit out of. But I feel that we have a risk associated with the change in government in the United States and its impact on international relations and on the international markets, interest rates, and all sorts of things that might affect us in this country if there are tariffs imposed on UK goods. And so I would ask that in future years we look at the change in government in the United States and potentially changes in government in the EU states as well as material to the economic conditions in this country, and given that the changes are quite radical, are likely to have an impact on our the interest rates, potentially have an interest and have a significant impact on the interest rates that we get for the money we have invested.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes.
I'll try and answer that as best I can without having a crystal ball. But what I can say is that the letter of representation is what I ask the council and Karen specifically to sign to give me representations on matters that are relevant to the audit of that year. So in future years, if there are matters that are relevant to the audit of the council's accounts and the entries in it that are macroeconomic or other elements, and I feel they are of that level of importance that I need assurance from the council of the things that they have taken into account, then they absolutely would be included in the letter of representation.
Thank you. Yes, as I said, I didn't think it was applicable to this letter, but it would be potentially applicable to other years. So I just bring it to everybody's attention, really.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Councillor G.
Yeah, I just think that's slightly bizarre because we've got no evidence whatsoever that, I mean, are we talking about Trump's going to affect the Derbyshire Dales District Council audit? I mean, there's all sorts of things that might happen next year. I mean, I could mention things about the spending that we've reviewed, additional spending recently, but I mean, that's slightly a little bit off the page, I would say.
Well, I think there was an element of crystal ball gazing from our esteemed auditor and stuff, but I don't know if you have a response for that at all, anyone, or Councillor Fletcher?
No, Chair, it's just the fact that we know that this letter is dictated to by the auditors in some respect, and it has to include the topics that are included, and I want to go straight in and move the report recommendation.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder at all for that? Councillor Hughes. Can I have all those four, please? That's unanimous. Thank you very much, everyone. On to the next item. That's this statement of accounts for 23-24, please. Karen.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
So this is the last of 3 reports relating to the statement of accounts for 23-24. And in this report, I'm asking members to approve the statement of accounts itself. I apologise first of all for the typo in the report summary on the first page of the report, where it refers to 2022/22. It should of course be 2023/24. The Council's accounts have been prepared with proper practices as demonstrated by the satisfactory completion of the external audit. Compliance can also be checked by reviewing the statement of accounts against the previous Audit Commission's aid memoir, which we've included as Appendix 1 to the report. The report describes the adjusted and unadjusted misstatements and the disclosure amendments that were identified during the during the external audit and management's response. As I mentioned before, there is just one unadjusted misstatement. The overall financial position at 31st of March 2024 remains the same as we reported in the outturn report to Council in July 2024. The audit opinion was added to the statement of accounts this afternoon after being issued by the external auditor. So please make sure you're considering the latest version of the document that's now on ModGov and on the website. Once approved by the committee, the audited statement of accounts will be published as soon as practical on the Council's website, alongside the audit completion report and the final version of the auditor's annual report. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Any questions from the floor? Councillor Shelley.
Sorry, my apologies. Can I just ask what's changed from yesterday to today, please, in a nutshell?
Just find the page numbers. Sorry, I'll just scroll down to the right part. So it's the addition of what's now page numbers 237 to 240 of the agenda pack. So it's the audit opinion itself has been added at the end of the statement of accounts.
Any come back on that, Councillor Shelley? Or?
I shall read and enjoy later. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shelley. Any more questions from anyone else? I just have one as well on the capital salaries, where we've overspent because it's got down to a more ambitious capital programme. Have we done any more deeper analysis on understanding that overspend? Is it one particular scheme, or is it capital salaries generally speaking across the board? Thank you.
I would expect that it was several schemes, but I don't have that information at the moment, but I can find it and send it to the committee.
Thank you, that'd be great. Thank you, Karen. Do I have any proposals at all for this? Councillor Flitter.
Yes, Chair. Again, this is a factual report of the previous year's accounts, and it's gone through the motion, so I move the officer recommendation.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that officer? Councillor Ripton, thank you very much. Can I have all those four, please? Thank you very much. That's carried. Thank you. On to the next item. Thank you very much, Karen, for your time. To food waste and recycling fees. Thank you. If I could pass over to Mr. Watts.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief, members. The report that's in front of you is asking for approval on the attached fees and charges for the new trade waste service. Normally, this would come as part of the wider fees and charges document that you approved in December last year. The only reason that it hasn't is because this is a new service that is being required of councils to be delivered, and the policy on this only came out on the 29th of November last year. We required information from our waste and recycling collection contractor Serco, which arrived on the 17th of December as noted in the report. Since then, we have pulled together some costings on delivering the service and associated fees and charges through benchmarking against other councils. The collection will be for food waste and recycling waste collections for trade services across Derbyshire Dales. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the floor at all? Councillor.
Thanks, Chair. On the fees and charges, Ash, is it going to be as and when required, or is it going to be like a weekly or fortnightly or monthly, whatever, or is it just as and when the business premises have got the bin full, do they ring up and get them emptied and charge for per bin, per empty, like?
Thank you, Councillor Lees. So, in answer to your question, the recycling will be offered initially as fortnightly. Food will be weekly because we're actually piggybacking it on the back of existing services. Because we're not sure of the uptake initially, we didn't want to run before we could walk. So we're offering a basic standard service to be compliant with the legislation, and then we've got time to reanalyse services by next fees and charges.
Is that answer that? Thank you, Councillor G. Councillor G, sorry.
Yeah, because these are additional works that are being carried out by Serco, is this something that we intend to put out to tender, or do we just accept the price from Serco for this additional work? Is it something that we're tied into Serco for, or is it something that could actually be put out to tender to other private contractors?
Thank you, Councillor.
To answer your question, it's included in the matrix. It was something that was going to be brought in anyway within the contract lifespan, so that's why we've been able to do it this way.
Seems to make sense to me. Is there any come back at all, Councillor? No, it's fine. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you very much. Well, these charges, presumably we're keeping we still have the liability for disposal of the waste at the end of that is collected, do we? As we do with the household waste.
We do, yes.
Yeah. How is that service? Is that profitable or not profitable?
We've literally set the prices to cover all of the costs involved, so for the collections and obviously including the tonnages, etc. And then obviously we can analyse once we know more over the next year when we know how many customers we've got, but we're covering costs.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Lee.
I'm just thinking on my first question about it. If the businesses wanted an additional empty, say, could that be done at an extra cost?
Initially, we're offering a basic service in the sense of fortnightly, weekly. Obviously, if it was a case of an emergency situation, we would assist with the business, but initially, no. Moving forward, we would look to be offering a more established service by 1st of April 26.
No. Any further questions? Councillor Ripton.
Yeah, just clarify for my understanding. So is this a subscription service that retailers will notify you about that they want to be included, or how will it work?
So the new legislation basically means that every business within the UK that has over 10 full-time employees must segregate their waste into 4 separate streams. We are obviously, we must as an authority offer the service, so we must offer the waste solution for those 4 waste streams, which is what we're doing. Initially, what we're doing is we're offering it to our existing customers. So we've got existing trade customers that come to us for general waste. So we're initially contacting them to say, look, we're opening this up. We've got these other services that we can offer you. But we want to go beyond that and offer it out to businesses, not necessarily that have the 10 full-time employees, but also under 10 full-time employees, because they might just want to recycle. But we're trying to do it slowly. We're trying to be compliant with the legislation and then obviously grow from there.
Thank you.
Chair, if I can just add to that, please. Just it is a subscription service, Councillor Ripton, in the sense that we have to provide the service, but the business doesn't have to choose the council. There are other commercial operators in the market.
Yeah, that's helpful, which was the other bit of my question. And I guess the sort of final piece is that in many ways we could look at this and say it could drive revenue, but actually we don't want anybody paying for this, because the real prize is people don't waste food. And so I guess that the ultimate measure is people stop throwing the stuff away.
Thank you. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. I appreciate welcome the idea of moving it to companies with fewer than 10 employees. I think those ones that are left out often, and they do create quite a lot of, there are a lot of them, so they will create a reasonable amount of waste. Have you market tested these rates? Do you know how they figure against other people, the private waste disposal people?
We've done some basic benchmarking, but this is a new service across the UK. The only authorities particularly that had this in place before was actually Wales and Scotland, so we're actually trying to catch up with their legislation. We've done some simple benchmarking across other authorities and what we can see out there, which is why we've obviously gone to cover our costs and basically make it, a really nice competitive price. Moving forward, we'll have more of an idea and we'll be able to benchmark, wider with private organisations, but I think we're actually cheaper.
Thank you. Councillor Flitter.
Yeah, just going on a question from Councillor Ripton. Are we actually allowed to make a profit on these charges, or have we got are we tied to covering our costs?
Chair, we can make a surplus, Councillor Flitter, on the revenue that we generate. But what we wanted to do with it being a new service is make sure that we build the foundations from in the sense that we wanted to be competitive, we wanted to be a good service. So we've started at what we consider as a baseline fee here. If we get a good uptake and we get consistency through the year, then we might look to increase those charges. What we didn't want to start is at a higher point, knowing some of the challenges that we've had to overcome to get to this place.
Thank you. Do I have any people to propose this one at all? Thank you, Councillor Hughes.
Chair, I'd like to move this. I think it's excellent, and I think it builds on what has been done with garden waste as well. So I think it's an extension to the services we offer, and one that should mean less waste going not being recycled. So, well, I think this is great.
Councillor, do I have a seconder at all? Councillor Bates. Did you want to comment on it all? No. Can I put that to the vote then, please? All those for, please. It's unanimous. Thank you very much, everyone. It's carried. And on to our next item, I think our final one. Oh, where's my paper? Where are I? Response to government consultation on strengthening the standards and conduct framework for local authorities in England. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm providing this report on behalf of Barbara Beardwell. It's regarding the Governance and Resources Committee is asked to note the recently launched consultation on strengthening the standards and conduct framework for local authorities in England, and to delegate the consultation response to the monitoring officer in consultation with the chair of the Governance and Resource Committee. The consultation seeks views on introducing a mandatory minimum code of conduct for local authorities and measures to strengthen the standards code of conduct regime to ensure a consistent approach amongst councils investigating serious breaches of members' code of conduct, including introduction of the power of suspension and disqualification for multiple breaches and gross misconduct. The consultation also seeks views on whether there should be a right of appeal on decisions of suspension and potential disqualification, and if so, whether appeals panels should be in-house within local authorities or whether the responsibility should sit with an independent national body. Members should note that this will be the council's response, and individual councillors can also respond directly to the consultation. The consultation will last for 10 weeks from the 18th of December, so we're looking to get responses if the motion goes ahead, and that any response be submitted by the 25th of February. The government guidance states that all responses to the consultation are anonymous. So the recommendation being sought is that the Governance and Resources Committee notes the consultation on strengthening the Code of Conduct and delegates the response to the consultation to the monitoring officer in consultation with the chair of the GNR Resources Committee, having regards to your views of this committee. If the recommendation is moved tonight, due to the imminent deadline of the 25th of February, I would be asking is after this meeting, I could run through the questions to get your views so I can then put them forward. And Barbara will be drafting up a draft report and then run it past the chair before it's submitted.
Thank you very much. Is that clear for everyone on what that item is? Councillor Hughes.
Chair, I've got some concerns about doing this when there are a lot of things being done but not being done in terms of monitoring the performance of this council. And one of them is the Scrutiny Committee, which hasn't met in months. As chair of the Scrutiny Committee, I'd like to formally complain that the Scrutiny Committee has not met and has not been able to meet because the resources haven't been available for it. It has a major inquiry on its books, a major agenda item which has been there for 18 months and has not been progressed because of lack of resources. So spending resources filling in a questionnaire does not seem to be an appropriate use of the monitoring officer's time or the legal representative's time either, given the shortage of resources in that function.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Have we a response, or would we be referring that to Barbara?
Well, no, it's here for the committee whether they wish to have a joint response to this consultation. Councillors independently can file their own responses.
Councillor G.
Is this debate or is it questions to the officer?
Questions of the officer on the paper being proposed.
I think
on the consultation.
I'll wait for the debate, I think.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor G. Any more? Do I have anyone to propose? Or?
Can I just ask then, Chair, what are the ramifications if we don't send a response?
Well, the government are gathering all the information together. The responses are anonymous, so they're considering everybody's responses before they decide how they're going to progress with the proposal. So it would mean that as a council, we've not provided a joint response, but it doesn't stop independent people from filing their own.
Councillor Hughes.
Chair, I move that we do not send a response noting that we have a lack of resources at a monitoring officer level and in the legal department in the council. And it's not only the monitoring the scrutiny committee that's not being met. I'm also the leader of Matlock Town Council. We've been waiting for, is it 5 years or it's 6 years, for property to be that's been agreed to be transferred from one authority to the other, has yet to be transferred, and that is a call on the legal representative's time. We just do not have the resources to waste it on something which is going to be anonymous and will have very little effect on, will have very little impact on government decisions.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor G.
Yeah, I'll second that from. And do you want me to explain why now?
Please, Councillor G. We're in debate now.
Basically, I mean, I was on the Standards Committee on Amber Valley for quite a long time, about 12 years, and there already are things in place for councillors. I think it's called the Nolan Principles, isn't it, that we all recognise. Actually, I've only been on this committee this year, so I'm glad that I've been furnished that this committee deals with standards as well, because I haven't seen anything come up. I mean, I was used to them coming up at Amber Valley because we had a whole process of looking through the constitution all the time. Then we had to look through issues, you know, parish councillors, members of the council. They had to be discussed in private first to see if they were worth coming to the committee. But I just think the procedures are already there for councils if we need it. And I totally agree with Councillor Hughes. We just don't need any more work, thank you very much. So let's send a message, say thanks, but no thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have any other voices? Shall we put that to the vote? Just to confirm, that's to turn this paper down. Thank you very much. All those for turning the paper down, please put your hand. And all those against? And any abstentions? That's carried, please. To turn the paper down. Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. That was all items on the agenda. Thank you very much.